Welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Rise News. I am Adesua Omorwan.
And I'm Rufai Osedi.
Great to have you join us on this segment of the show. Now, from his journey in the corporate world, rising to be the first indigenous managing director of GSK and running for governor in Imo State, Chidi Okoro has always debated possible ideas for the development of Nigeria. A trained pharmacist from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and a consultant in strategy and business development to organizations in FMCG, pharmaceutical, retail, and Africa operations. Now, Chidi Okoro joins us this morning to talk to us on some of these ideas for the development for Nigeria. Welcome to the Morning Show. Great to have you.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you once again.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So today we are blessed to have, two guests from the prestigious University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Lions as they are fondly called.
Yeah, great to hear.
And it's more than a joy having you. So I just want you to start from telling us your experience, from the corporate sector. You're the first indigenous managing director of GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, and you transited to be an aspirant for the position of the governor of Imo State. And you learned a lot. You learned money politics the hard way from the corporate boardroom. I mean, what's that experience like?
Yeah, interesting. It's an experience everyone should have. If you're interested in development of Nigeria, I'll encourage that you step in. I try to compare business and politics, or the corporate world and politics. Is there a lot of difference? Yes, there's a lot. Is there similarity? Absolutely. Both of them should make profit. The corporate world, we should make profit. In politics, you should profit the people. So you can see there's a bit of a relationship between that. You're supposed to lead people. You're supposed to manage resources that are scarce most times. You're supposed to manage interest and stakeholders. They all rhyme. The difference of Nigeria's politics, I think, is that you can say it's at infancy. It can still be confusing, complicated, and a bit immature. Nigeria's politics is still led by money, religion, ethnicity, and probably violence. So you're going to see that thrown at you. So when I went in to run, I had great interest for Imo State. I thought I understood the issues. I actually spent time trying to understand the issues, and I did study that. But when you step into the field, slightly different. The people understand that you know what the issues are, but, you're told that, we know you're the right person, but, you don't have the resources, you don't have the power. And I keep asking, what's the resources you mean? You mean money. We can raise fund. We can get crowd fund. They tell you it's beyond money. Are you ready to do everything that we want you to do? So it's, and I think that's why we remain where we are. You learn the hard way, but you have to learn from the front end. It's an experience I wish all of my friends to go.
In fact, at this point, you said while you were pitching, to the members of APGA in Imo State, one of them looked at you and, quote and unquote, said, he's a wizard.
That's right.
He knows all the answers to the problems.
Yes.
But I can't vote for you.
That's right.
And that's why you dropped out a week to the primaries, because you don't have money.
Absolutely.
And you cannot swing things.
That's right.
That's the Nigeria we stand in today.
That's where we are.
And that's why, collectively, from 2014 till this time, debt-to-service ratio, that used to be 25%, has gone to 60%. How do you pull all of this together?
I think Nigeria's issue, I put that in my book in 2012, 2013. I guess you had read a copy of that book, Another Perspective. The biggest issue we have is criminal incompetence and sometimes stupidity. We don't understand what the issues are. That's the beginning of Nigeria's problem. So we all talk about the governor has done well. He's built a lot of roads. Let's take where we are, for instance. We built bridges. We've done the roads. But Lagos is dirtier than it was 5-6 years ago. It still takes you longer in traffic. There's no new classroom. There's no education reform. If you come back to Imo State, where I come from, the governor has built a lot of roads, but the roads actually peel off 2 weeks after they get built. The contractors are not paid. There's no system of governance. So that's the challenge that Nigeria has, criminal incompetence. I think that's what we need to face, to be sure we get the right people who first understand what the issues are. Most of the people running are people who just won offices or elective offices. I'm not sure they understand they're taking up bankrupt states. I'm not sure, because I'm seeing celebrations. I'm seeing them changing their wardrobes. But it's a tough job they're going into. They're going to meet states that are totally bankrupt and owing the whole world. That's where we're headed.
Well, just yesterday, the CBN governor, while facing the committee screening, says Nigeria's economy, we have a tough time ahead to face.
Absolutely.
He says the road is very rough and there are tough times ahead. But this tough times would require tough measures, tough decisions.
That's right.
Do you think that we're capable of these tough decisions? And what sort of decisions should we be looking at? Are we supposed to review the monetary policy? There's the issue of subsidy. This administration seemed not to have been able to take a tough stand on that. There's the issue of electricity. What are the tough measures we should be looking at?
I think Emefiele's position is understood by everyone. You just need to look around your environment and see the number of people losing jobs. Our GDP is growing about 2% year on year, and our population is growing 3%. Very simple. You're in a tough. You're having more people than you can feed. That's very simple. Your debt is 24 trillion today. 70% are local, 30% are international. And if you have further devaluation, 24 trillion could mean 60 trillion. You're actually back to 1996-98 period. That's where we are as a country. I think leadership should be about very basic things. You got to be creative in leadership. That's number one. You got to be courageous. That's key. And you got to collaborate with people and institutions. We haven't been able to have that courage to make those choices. That's key. Our monetary policy, when you get to the CBN, you do have 3, 4, 5 exchange rates. That doesn't give confidence to investors.
Well, he was asked about that yesterday.
That's right.
He says we don't have multiple exchange rates. What we do have is multiple windows. Do you think he's in self-denial?
I think he's semantics. He's in self-denial. He's got to come out and own up to that. And he may have a great reason for having multiple. Is that the right thing? Does that help governance? Absolutely not. It doesn't help. So if you do have those windows, people can trade within those windows. That's what it means. So how am I going to compete with you if you're trading at 306 and I'm buying at 346 to $1? Already I'm beaten, so I do not trust the economy. And remember, your economy is about sentiment. If I'm not confident that you're making the right choices, that you're transparent enough, that you're going to respect rule of law, etc., due process, I will not be throwing my money at that. So those are the issues. At the moment, we're spending 65% of our revenue to service debt. As we go along, our debt could become 40 trillion. It could become over the next 10 years if we continue at this rate. I was reading this morning, Lagos-Ibadan Road, we started building that 2008. It's only 40% done. That's 120 kilometers. And all of the roads. We're in a conundrum because we don't understand the issue. Where does Nigeria's GDP lie? We don't understand that. It's only in Nigeria you still see governors break down markets. They destroy a market. If you try to open a shop in front of your house, you're going to get 15 bills. They don't encourage you. So how do you pay tax when you don't make money?
And that you talked about just made me segue into a great conversation. Professor Hernando de Soto will always have about property rights. That's also going to help me segue into what you talked about, when you talked about the economic contraption and things happening. I was reading a report recently, and I like the phrase, the roads are rough. Like Tasha Larry would say, may your road be rough.
That's right.
A Bloomberg report came out. In fact, the report was tagged the tsunami of poverty.
That's right.
Showing a stark reality and contrast between 2014 and 2019. FDI is at 2014, 5 billion, now 2 billion US dollars. Debt to service ratios at 2014, 25%, now 60%. Unemployment rate about 8%, now 23%. And there's another one. In fact, we're talking about the fact about that before we came on the air. That unemployment and underemployment are like diastolic and systolic blood pressures. Underemployment is even worse than unemployment.
That's right.
I mean, how do you make sense of all of this in this economy that says, I'm going to be the giant of Africa, I'm going to be the first one economy in the world in 2020? That's almost unachievable any longer.
Yeah. I think the first thing Nigeria has to do is to stop making claims. We're not giant of Africa nowhere. We're not a great country nowhere. We should drop all those.
We're not a great country?
Yeah, you cannot feed your people. 91 million under extreme poverty. 10 million plus out of school. And don't forget, 30 million being miseducated. In the South, we gloat about the fact that we're going to school. Miseducation is not quite different from not having education at all. When you look at Nigeria and you forecast into the future, there are choices we must make, very tough choices. You're having these 10 million kids, and they're, every year we have 6 million new children in Nigeria. How many of them really get to school? Let me tell you where Nigeria falls apart. We don't understand the issue. Nigeria's vaccination rate is about 58 to 62%. Some states is about actually 20%. If you don't have vaccination, chances of making 55, 60 is very low. And think about that. No wonder your per capita life expectancy is only 54, 55 years. Ghana is 64 years, 62. That's down the road. So what's our literacy rate? 64%. Can we fix these basic things? And I love the fast rail. I love the green rail, the blue line. That's all. But you need to, first of all, do the basic. Let's move stuff around. You cannot patch the roads and you're building fancy train stations. Lagos has been building a 24-kilometer train station since 2006. Hang on.
Initially since 83.
Yes.
Because the project first broke down in 83 and it was stopped.
Remember that Cross River would have gone in to build a rail station. River State tried. Enugu also went in to build, by the way. We don't understand the issue. What are the basics that we need to fix? The only way to tell the future prosperity of a nation is through access and quality of education. We missed the two, meaning that in future, we may become poorer. Your GDP per capita over the last 3 years dropped $3,200 to $1,900. That's an indication.
Well, let's look at the business environment in Nigeria. We're beginning to see a lot of divestment from multinationals and corporate entities. You're the first indigenous MD of GSK. Yeah. I'm sure you're aware, just recently, GSK did announce that it was closing down its plants in Agbara in Lagos. That's the biggest it has, pharmaceuticals. Do you see, as President Muhammadu Buhari, winds down his first administration to resume another tenure, do you see any deliberate effort in policies and strategy to reverse this trend that we are seeing and encourage investment in the country?
I think first we've seen a couple of divestments, but they are not leaving the country. Let's be clear about that. They are going to change their business model. Their business model will change. That's what will happen with many of the multinationals, because maybe they cannot. Sometimes you can say there are different reasons for that. Number one, the consumers cannot afford the products, so people are looking for cheaper alternatives. That's the first stuff that drives that. Once your volume keeps dropping, manufacturing becomes unsustainable. Never mind what we say that once we have power, manufacturing thrives. That is, again, that's our lack of understanding of the issue. If you can build volume through manufacturing, you don't need power from the grid. You can generate your own power at lower cost than the grid. So multinationals will change their model. So
why is that? Is it because disposable income is dropping? That's why people can't afford GSK products?
Absolutely. You can see that. You have 20 million people out of job. Purchasing power is down. Just try to go to the store with 10,000 today compared to probably 10 years ago. You probably come out with a small nylon. So because of that, they sell less, so they have to change their business model. That's what the multinationals are doing. And you do have, in fairness, you do have some companies taking the share of the market. That's interesting. Is the government doing enough? We went through a recession. We went through a period they couldn't find forex. And with devaluation, what you have is your imports of raw material is more expensive. Again, because of low purchasing power, you cannot take price increase. So your gross margin keeps slipping. You get to a point that you say, no, I cannot continue. Can the government do a lot more? First of all, they have to understand. They have to show they understand what the issues are. I am not sure the government understand what the issues are, because the same government tell you that being poor is a virtue. Don't forget, we're now worshiping poverty. You're being told that you're the highest consumer of champagne in the world. That's rubbish. We're not even top 20. I don't know where we get the statistics from. We could be number one in Africa, but we're the largest population in Africa. So being poor, there's nothing wrong with consumption, but we're being told that consumption is wrong. You're being told that, eating apple is wrong. These are some of the rhetorics of a government that worry anybody who wants to invest here. Remember, it's all about people read what you say. Yes. You can hear a lot of our government, even flying airplanes is supposed to be luxury. Unless the government understand what the issues are, they cannot design the solutions for that. You've got to make the environment really acceptable to investment. You saw the MTN saga. You suddenly throw stuff at MTN. Everybody's watching. If you can do that with MTN, who am I? This small player. Remember, we used MTN to market our economy in the 2000s, didn't we? It was about what we were saying to the whole world to come. So what policies can the government have? The first thing is you got to assure them that when they bring investment, they can take it back out.
But is that to mean that when people, have one or two dealings that the government should sort of look into, they shouldn't look into? I mean, I'll give you another case.
Yeah.
It's so quick. When we look at the EU that is looking for the same investment,
That's
Maria
right.
Vestager,
That's
the
right.
EU competition chief, slammed Google with a $12 billion fine
Absolutely.
on tax issues.
That's right. Nothing wrong with that. When people go against the law, they get slammed.
Yeah.
But follow a process.
Okay.
And that process has to be transparent. That's very important. It has to be transparent. At the end of the day, what did MTN pay? No one knows. There's so many figures flying around. It got to be transparent. And that transparency is what investors do desire. They want to know what will happen if that happens. If you're not open on that, is my investment secure? If it's secure, then I'm going to bring money. Can they afford my products? That's key. But as long as our people get poorer, security is another thing.
Mm-hmm.
You see what's happening pan-Nigeria in different areas. Can you deal with this? If you can deal with this, we can come in to invest. The number of kidnappings happening in places outside of the north of Nigeria. Sometimes we pepper over this and believe that it's happening only in Zamfara. But as people get poorer, they're going to get violent. Because the only way a lot of people think you can survive in Nigeria is to become a demagogue, form your own army. And it's happening in a lot of places. Those are some of the challenges.
Sort of a replica of the Tonton Makute in Haiti back in the days.
No one can say where we're headed.
Well, the government is quick to say, we lack funding, and that's the song you hear. Oil prices have not been so, just recently we're seeing them bouncing back. But there's this huge, very healthy appetite for Chinese loans. I want to hear your thought on that, because the Federal Executive Council meeting just approved another $1 billion Chinese loan for a hydropower plant that would generate about 360 megawatts. What's your take on these Chinese loans?
I think, first of all, nothing wrong with borrowing, but you have to borrow within what you can pay. Be sure that your economy is productive enough to be able to pay back the loans. There are danger signals. What are you applying the loan to? Let's be sure that we apply that critically. If you look at Nigeria, we built our first rail, new one, between Kaduna and Abuja. Let's be realistic. That's not one of the most priority locations in Nigeria in terms of contribution to our productivity. It's not. We have to say it. The way we make those choices is very important. What are those 8, 9, 10 roads that really link up 80% of Nigeria's GDP? I'm sure the government should know that, shouldn't they? Or the economic team should know that. Should we fix those roads? We can borrow from China for all kinds of things, but let's be careful that we apply those stuff, and those stuff will be productive enough to pay. Remember, the payment could start in 20 years' time, 10 years' time. Then $1 billion today is 360 billion naira. It could be 1 trillion naira.
But I want to get on this, because we have seen the insistence of China with countries they've lent money to, and we've seen the way they got the money back. I'll give you a quick instance. A country called Guinea has a GDP per capita of about 10 billion, and China did borrow them about 3 or 4 times their national GDP, about 40 billion. We see what is happening in Zambia currently, that China is taking over the airport. National dailies in Zambia now are being written in Chinese. That's an effect of the loan.
Yes.
What's the certainty that we're not going to get there someday with China?
I think that's why I'm saying let's be sure that our economy will be productive enough to pay back the loan. At the moment, we use 2/3 of our revenue to pay back. What are we doing to make sure our revenues rise? How do we get our revenue? Oil price is up $71, but you know that the oil environment is changing. Let's not talk about the fact that oil will not be relevant in time. Let's not talk about that, because it'll still be relevant at least the next 10, 20 years. But think about that. You have a swing producer, America, 15 million barrels per day.
The highest in the world.
You have another block, Russia, China. China makes some oil, don't they? Russia makes oil. So at the moment, some of our oil don't get sold at all. Because last month, the Federal Executive Council, FAC, was 400 billion or there, about 600 billion. That's quite low, because we haven't sold enough oil as we would. we should focus on our ability to pay. And the ability to pay will come from productivity. Productivity will come from few things. But number one, ability to move around, that's number one. Number two, education quality. Not just access, the quality of education. Do you have people who can work and earn decent pay so they can pay decent tax? Healthcare, basic health. You know, Nigeria is, that we have a few things that kill us. Diarrhea is one of the things that kill hundreds of thousands. Malaria, cough and cold, hypertension, all of this can be managed. So we can do the basics and raise productivity of Nigerians. But I'm not hearing a conversation around that. I heard from Minister for Health, 10,000 healthcare centers is trying to build 3 years ago. That he's a comedian. I'm sorry to say that because he doesn't understand what he's saying. You can't even build.
That's what harsh on him?
I like to be harsh on this guy because we paid him a lot of money to do work. I like to get harsh on some of these guys now. That's comedy. Why are you promising 10,000? You can't even build 1,000. And you don't need to build a structure to have a healthcare center, do you? We need to be creative.
Let me take you back to Imo State. I know before I started with that,
Yes.
you're a member of the Transition Technical Committee, right?
Yes.
To be precise, the Agriculture, Commerce, Industry Subcommittee.
Yes.
Now, we do know that the outgoing governor, Governor Chidi Okoro Speaks,
Yes.
brought up an initiative reducing the working days in the week so that the civil servants can have time to go to the farms. I wonder, how effective has this policy been in Imo State? And is it one you're recommending for the incoming governor, Governor Ihedioha?
Yeah. Okay, first, I'm not competent to speak for the Transition Committee, and I'm sure they have their spokesperson. But I think the governor, Rochas, has got 3 weeks or so to go. Would rather not spend too much time on that. Imo is building to go on a new curve. We hope the incoming administration will take Imo on a new path. I mean, Rochas, in all fairness, he meant well, but meaning well doesn't mean great governance. He's done his best, not good enough. Prioritization was poor. Imo is bankrupt as a state, so you can make them work 1 day a week, it doesn't matter. You're owing arrears or salaries. The environment is in poor state. So the new government got some work to do. I hope and believe that he's prepared to manage a bankrupt state. So I wish him well.
All right. And hopefully we'll learn to get out of this god of small things, like that Roy calls it.
Absolutely.
So actually, a very big thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mazi Chidi Okoro, as you love to be called.
That's right.
For being here and being a good sport this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, it's now time for a short break on the Morning Show. When we return, we'll have a software development expert. Stay tuned.